Well, hello everyone. You've reached the Lunch with Larry series again. Today we're going to be talking about digital health, and in that context we're going to be discussing low code and how to use and utilize low code to improve your productivity. So I'm just going to start with a couple slides just to talk about context. This is just my splash screen, so this is all the ways you can get a hold of me if you need anything. I'd be more than happy to help you. So the phone number, all the LinkedIn, information, but also this historical webinar location. I think it's important for you because what it allows you to do is go back and look at the previous webinars we've done. We have, I think, 16, 17 of them up there now on a whole variety of different topics, from design control to design authoring and all the design excellence topics that we have, operational excellence, and now we're in digital health. So if you choose to, you can go back and see all the previous videos that we've developed. So feel free to do that. Just wanted to talk a little bit about what we're trying to discuss in this series. It's really a discussion about how do we develop platform cloud solutions in the context of regulatory controls. And so the first session that we did was related to agile development. How do we control and do product development in the context of agile development processes? Second session was related to how is it that we then integrate that with the regulatory concerns. So source documents, how risk management ties into agile development, and how does all that work together. The third session was a session with Bakul Patel, who is the digital health leader at the FDA. And today we're going to talk about low code and how low code can improve your productivity. So this is all an effort to sort of work it all together. And so what we're doing here is combining the software planning piece with the software design. And so today's discussion is really about software design. How do we author that software and push it back into the planning process? Just to provide a little bit of context, when we talk about software, oftentimes people don't think of medical devices as the same thing as software, but of course, when we talk about software as a medical device, not only is it a medical device, but it's also in the software domain. And what we need to be able to do then is manage across these margins. So when we develop the product, oftentimes we'll have software that is a medical device and software that is not a medical device, and we need a system to put all this together in a way that allows us to manage across the margins, do some projects driven from only our internal marketing or some other type of regulation, but also have a process for developing regulated software as well. And this is really what we're trying to combine. Oftentimes inside a medical device, when we do risk management and we contextualize that data, the risk management is broken up, even if it is a medical device, into categories of risk. And so even if you're only doing medical device software, we're going to have to categorize the software differently based on the type of thing that we're doing with the software. So that all leads us to how is it we're going to author this software. And what we're really trying to do is focus in on this improvement in productivity today. So we're going to build apps faster, and the way we're going to do it is with a low-code solution. And hopefully today we're going to have the opportunity to talk about how is that accomplished? How do we do it? And so that's going to bring us to the point where we're going to have a discussion with Luke. And so our guest today is Luke Seiler, and he is our Mendix solution architect that we're going to talk about these different activities with. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and share his screen. I'm sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing here. So we're going to make Luke the presenter. And as we go across this process, he's going to go ahead and open up his screen. And as he does that, maybe he can provide a little bit of background for himself. Why is it he is an expert, and provide us with a little bit of his background. So thanks, Luke. I look forward to talking to you.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, my name is Luke Seiler. I've been with Siemens for quite a long time. So I have a background in software development, as well as working in some cases doing sysadmin work for a lot of the management and deployment of applications through a DevOps process. So, being as in terms of having a software development background and being able to utilize Mendix here, and understanding the whole concept of why it can help not only the business users in the development process, but as well as the developers themselves.
All right, well, fantastic. So I guess we just start with an orientation. What exactly is Mendix? Where would it be utilized? Maybe you can start with that.
Yeah, so here I am. I'm at the Mendix.com website. I'm just going to kind of walk through it. So Mendix itself, right, is really just a platform as a service, providing a low-code, no-code way to build applications that really are cloud native and have that software as a service piece of it. It does allow you to create all these applications in this low-code environment, using anything and bringing any type of data that you can work with. It can take any applications to modernize, to engage, to innovate with other customers, and then of course automate any type of processes that you may be working with. Mendix itself, it's going to empower both your business as well as your IT and the professional developers there to make the apps together, really, because you're not in the same context of having to find a true professional developer to start building these applications. You can bring in a multitude, a variety of personas to move you along that way. It also has a completely cloud native aspect to it. So Mendix is built for the cloud to be developed on the cloud as well as deployed inside of the cloud with that all that modern architecture and the great things that the cloud provides to you when you actually start using it with those apps. Mendix is one of the low code leaders in terms of Gartner and the Magic Quadrant, and Mendix also is a big trusted partner between multiple companies. Of course, it's Siemens with all of our products, but as well as somebody like an SAP as well as IBM to kind of bring those partnerships together. And we do have a lot of key architecture principles just in terms of making sure we have that cloud native architecture. We are trying to instead of having to type out code, we'll see a more of a visual development process that you're working through, bringing in multiple users and bringing in multiple environment experience, still working towards the one goal of the single application and model of that application. And then just like any other Siemens product, we try and be as open and as extensible as possible through a variety of different types of APIs as well as platforms of your choosing. So Larry, I think that's kind of just an overview here of Mendix.
Oh, fantastic. So let's get into it. So maybe we can start with a sample application and understand how you develop the environment, how you construct the environment, get people a better technical sense of how we engage with the product.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually going to go over here to my next tab I have set up, which is just me logged into the Mendix portal. And through this, I can see all the applications I've currently developed, as well as I can create applications through here and view a variety of different things. The nice thing about this is that I click on create an app, for instance, if I just wanted to start standing up my own application to develop in, I can choose a starting point. So I'm not kind of at the mercy of trying to develop something from scratch or bring in something from scratch or of those situations. We can set up, what we call templates, just either based upon my company as well has its own templates, or even Mendix itself provides a ton of out-of-the-box templates. So I'm not starting from a basic just emptiness, right? I have an entire way to kind of start with. So, whether or not my company, as you probably have noticed with some of the Siemens products, we have a standard stylized design that we utilize across the board for all of our products. And you'll also see that kind of stylized design today when we get further into the application we're going to look at. But we can provide that in terms of a template. So everybody's developing the same way based upon that same template. So there's no big standardization off the board, but it still allows the ability to also, if you need to, have multiple templates to support a variety of different use cases that you have. And I could select this template and continue on with the creation, but I kind of already had an application I want to work through and show you guys. So I have this plant maintenance application here, and this is just a basic project portal for it. A lot of these stories here are being brought in from Polarian, for instance, so we can utilize that for ALM on the back end, and just essentially being able to create that integration with Polarian. So that's one of the integrations that Siemens has as part of the Mendix platform. But I can also manage my environments in a lot of cases here, and also see a couple different types of scenarios. But Mendix also has something called Mendix Studio. This Mendix Studio is the web browser development environment, which I'll start with, and then I'll kind of go towards our our desktop environment here. So I have these pages that I can look at. This one has quite a bit of pages, but I could go to my home page, for instance. So I can go to this home dashboard, and the whole concept of it, right, is I'm showing what we call a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. So I have this little canvas that's going to show me exactly what it's going to look like when I deploy this application. And on the right-hand side, I have all these toolboxes with building blocks and widgets. That it's just as simple as dragging and dropping directly inside of it to make the changes. And then, of course, Mendix itself, right? You might want to develop it for a specific piece, whether it's a tablet or a phone, right? So this is just one of the development environments that we have, but it also closely collaborates with the other development environment, which is the desktop component of it. So there is a Mendix Studio Pro environment that we utilize here in terms of how it actually works. So Larry, I think before we kind of get started with there, I want to kind of stop here and let you continue.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, and one of the things we want to, I think that I would want to, if I were a new developer, is to understand from a logic standpoint, how do we drive the logic? So we have a template, and that template has logic behind it, right? So how is it we drive the logic as part of development of an application like this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So now that I'm in this kind of Mendix Studio Pro environment, I can show a multitude of different things. So, Larry's talking about the entire logic piece of it. So I can expand what we call these microflows. And this is really in terms of the way that we're going to develop logic. So I can open this up and we can actually view this way that we're going to model the logic. So instead of having to write our logic out, I can create these actions, which is more of a process flow. And not only that, but there's something called this Mendix Assist that allows me that kind of brings in data from all the thousands, hundreds of thousands of applications that Mendix has built, saying, giving you recommendations and using that, more of that AI aspect of it to provide you, say, well, we may want to do a check to make sure that what you retrieve from the database is correct in the correct type, for instance, in that case. But we can do a multitude of things here by bringing in stuff like loops and looping through all of these types of pieces that we have. We can bring in decisions if we need to, make a decision based upon certain variables and pieces like that. So instead of actually just typing out our logic, we're modeling our logic here. We're modeling our entire, database and everything that we have. And just like our, web UI, right? This has the exact same setup to where I can go into a responsive types of pages here and also view that same dashboard, whether it is in this more the structure mode, as well as the whole design mode for that WYSIWYG aspect of it. For what you see is what you get. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, Mendix can really help set up the development environment and collaborate together. Whether you are business or IT, Larry, and then also have that logic flow.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things that I think about in a plant maintenance application like this is I immediately think, well, what if we wanted to blow it out to the rest of the organization? So, and what I mean by that is maybe we're going to do a quality management review board. And so I want to start including in the plant maintenance, not just what's happening in the plant, but maybe things that are happening in production for one reason or another. And what that would require is that we sort of connect to these other data sources. There might be, you might have one data source that you're using for this particular application, but maybe you need to pull in your ERP system with SAP, or we need to pull some data in from Team Center. And so how do we connect this to a variety of different data sources? Maybe you could help us understand how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of mentioned at the start, a lot of those partnerships that we have with SAP, IBM already. So Mendix is a Solex partner of SAP. So it is the rapid application development solution for SAP. And it's up on their website and everything, and talks about it in more detail. But as well as Team Center, and we know Team Center itself, Siemens itself also has the very tight now relationship that we announced with SAP. So kind of creating that integration between these products is a key for a lot of people. Mendix itself provides a lot of capabilities here, right? So Mendix has just out-of-the-box connectors. And one thing I haven't even mentioned here is, like other types of low code, a lot of these connectors that you have, like an app store, for instance, we have this TC connector we can utilize. And if I even search through my app store, I can search for something like SAP. So if I search for SAP inside this app store, it's going to bring me a list of results. So, like an OData connector for SAP solutions, OData being that primary source of how data is transferred. And this is a free module, right? And it's managed by Mendix Siemens itself. And so it's not something that you're going to have to continue to update. The whole point is it's a free pricing scheme, right? So even today with that login page, you can log into Mendix for free. You can start developing for free, and you can download this module for free and utilize it. Unlike some low-code applications where you can log in for free and start developing, but you also have a pricing associated with a lot of the different types of extensions you may want to start building with. So Mendix provides that capability there, not only for SAP, but also for stuff like we had just seen for Team Center, for instance, which I'll get into a bit more detail with here. So there's a Team Center connector. There's a sample application that we provide as well to kind of start if you wanted to see how pages are generated and logic is done through that as well for the Team Center connector. But how does that actually work? Well, to kind of start with that, we have to kind of open up this, what we call the domain model. So this domain model is really the database inside of Mendix. It's how we're kind of graphically representing, our tables as well as, our columns within that database. Mendix works with any type of SQL database, that you may be wanting to work with. But in general, this is me mapping a lot of my data here. There's something called persistent entities, which would be like a persistent table inside of the database where data is being physically stored. And then there's a non-persistent entity, which is something that isn't being stored, and it's non-persisted inside of that database. So for Team Center specifically, right, I can kind of scroll down here into my Team Center logic area. And for a page where maybe I want to bring in data from Team Center for like a search or showing a bill of material, for instance, I have this item revision that I'm pulling. And if I click on this item revision, I can notice that I'm bringing it in from the Team Center connector and the item revision here. The whole point of the connector is if I opened up this domain model eventually, we can see it's a non-persistent entity. So I'm just bringing it in, and I could do a bunch of manipulation with it, save it off, and send it back to Team Center if I needed to. So kind of that read and write capabilities. And if I open up this Team Center connector domain model, you're going to notice it's going to get a little bit more complicated because Team Center itself is a very relational database, and all that mapping that's done between all those objects has already been, like, all the more difficult pieces for that tight integration has already been done here. And so it's going to be the same with SAP, to where you can you just are going to consume a lot of it rather than having to develop it all on your own. So Larry, I think from what I've shown, Mendix can easily connect to a variety of data sources.
Yeah, and just to maybe draw some of the value out, a lot of our customers, not only do they have these incredibly complex application landscapes, so they might be using our tool for PLM, but not for ALM, or for ALM, but not manufacturing execution. And oftentimes what they have are different revisions or different versions, either different applications or different versions of the applications running in different divisions, right? So we have these 15 divisions that are out there, and some are running the latest version, they're running HANA or they're running R3, right? And so we have all these different data sources, and what happens over time is they get updated, right? And so one of the things that I think is really interesting about all this is the application doesn't change, it's the data background and where the data is being driven from that changes, which makes update of these applications when your landscape of the architecture of your systems changes, it makes it much easier to keep these applications up to date. So any comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point of the SAP integration, right? As well as Team Center, to kind of keep the core clean, right? It's kind of that whole concept to keep the core, keep your master data or your pillar systems clean as possible, and then be able to do a lot of the customization or extensibility of those systems outside, to where you can easily upgrade those systems in the future without having to go through a longer process.
Sure. Yeah, and another thing that they talk a lot about is sort of ability to update in the cloud. So is it easy for us to deploy these updates in the cloud, or how is it that that's done exactly?
Yeah, so deployments with Mendix, there's a variety of ways we can do it. There is a Mendix cloud piece that you could deploy to within our own Mendix cloud, where we could essentially set up our own piece of it for you in your own private area of Mendix cloud, and then deploy all your apps to that. So our own Mendix cloud offering. There's also on-prem solutions where you would manage it and host it on your own. And pretty much through this, you would kind of just create the deployment package and build here. But I mean, the main piece of a lot of this, right, this is a cloud native application, right? And it's meant to work with containers, right? So that means that we can have high availability, low downtime, right? We can easily it can easily replicate itself, self-healing. So you don't have to worry about as much of the admin portions of it. So how does that work, right? Especially if we're trying to deploy this to a cloud environment. Well, Mendix has open APIs and specifically a deep integration with something like Kubernetes to actually manage and orchestrate all those containers and that entire environment. So whether you are on your own cloud, right, and you already have all that set up, Mendix can create that integration through your Kubernetes cluster to actually push in any type of deployment and update. So you can actually deploy directly through something like Studio Pro here, or even inside of the Mendix project, which I'll get to. So I can create a deployment package here, for anywhere I want to deploy it, or I could also run this and run it, on cloud or Cloud Foundry in this scenario, because this is a sandbox environment that I'm running. But I have an entire way to also run locally if I wanted to make my changes, which we'll get into next. But this entire environment is also being managed through this, right? So I have an entire environments here where I can click on my environment, see what's kind of going on. And I can deploy with our APIs connected up to your Kubernetes cluster directly through this with a single click of an app, or even connected up to your entire DevOps process with Polarian, for instance, to manage those as well.
Fantastic. So it seems one of the real productivity improvements is also creating an application as a central thing, and then being able to deploy it on different platforms like Android or just the cloud or iOS, but also different formats. So we have a small phone, we have a tablet, and maybe you could talk a little bit about how it is that the system manages deployment on these different platforms and different formats.
Absolutely. So I mentioned, in general, being able to develop this towards a tablet or a phone, right, in this WYSIWYG editor. But this is responsive, right? This is going to require a browser, whether that browser's on your phone, whether the browser's on your computer, tablet, etc. Right? You just have to open the browser, input the URL, and this is the app that you're getting. When we get into more discussion in terms of like a native mobile or a mobile app that you want to build out, things get a bit more complicated, because especially when you want to push these apps up to an app store, like like an Apple App Store, for instance, there's a lot more considerations you have to take, because Apple may not even accept an app that's a bit more hybrid in the approach, utilizing some of the responsive pieces. It more or less is kind of slowly getting towards this more. We want a pure native app that's going to work directly with our phone, and utilizing those more native concepts on the phone, like a biometric authentication piece to it, or trying to access camera and stuff like that. So Mendix utilizes React Native on the front end, to actually manage all that. So what does that mean? So it does have this mobile. I have this entire mobile piece over here. I'll kind of move out the rest of it, so we kind of just focus on this thing that I've expanded. So I had this mobile folder that I'm working in. So this entire application, which I'll run once I kind of go over this, it's also built natively. So I can bring this. I can actually take this and package it and put it on an app store, for instance. And instead of creating microflows, we call them nano flows here, for instance, in terms of the actual process and how it's working. Because not only could this be something that is working on your app, for your app on your native mobile device, but it's also something that can be worked for in terms of like an offline capability. And you're going to need to utilize these nanoflows if you want to utilize that offline capability, for instance. And then I have my own pages, because I'm building something now natively, but it's still in the context of this overall application. I can have this responsive application as well as this native application in the same project that I'm working towards. And I can also see, stuff like, asset details here, which we'll look at a little bit, that I'm building this page on. And I do also get, a design mode as well for just my native mobile phone for how it's going to look once I deploy it. So to kind of show you guys what this looks like, I'm just going to quickly view this. So this is just the initial responsive application that we're looking at, right? It's this plant maintenance and inspections application here with a bunch of metrics that are coming across. It's real-time monitoring of ovens on the floor and shop floor and managing a lot of cases. So this is kind of that initial page we looked at, but what does that mean for I wanted to view it on my phone, which is really that pure format that that Larry was discussing. So I'm actually going to bring up my phone here that I have. Give me just 1 second. Here we are. So Mendix has something called, to unlock my phone. So Mendix has something called this Make It Native app that you see on my phone screen right here. So if I open this up, it's going to allow me to scan a QR code. So I'm working in a development environment right now. And if I say scan this QR code, I can either scan it directly. You can see my setup right now, but I can also click go at the bottom here. And it's going to connect directly to my computer because my phone and my computer are on the same network. And it's going to take that entire application and load it into my phone right now. So I can just do it for testing to show you guys what has actually been built out here. So now I have this application running on my phone. I can now go through and just show you some functionality that's already been developed here. I can see some to-do incidents. I can click on this incident. I have an entire list here for something like perform safe shutdown. It can tell me that Team Center is connected. So if maybe I was in the offline mode, right, it would say Team Center, not connected currently because I don't have network access. But I have this perform safe shutdown piece that I can look at. I can see certain activities that are associated with this that I can go through and mark as complete or not complete. I also have I think I dropped for a second there. Sorry.
Yeah, you're back.
I think my phone also dropped for a second. I must have had some blip in the
network or something. Yeah.
Blip in the network for a second. Sorry, guys. So we'll get back to this. So back to perform safe shutdown. Where I can go through this. I have documents, PDFs that I could view inside of it. I could also have equipment associated with this work card that needs to be performed. So the whole concept is that I can bring in this data from anywhere. I can view this in either a responsive browser piece of it to view across any variety of browsers. I can also build these applications to be app specific that we can put up on an app store for Apple, for Android, right? Anything. That's the whole power of React Native is it's one piece of developing, but it's going to support of pretty much any mobile phone OS you can think of in today's frame. So overall, Mendix itself is that low-code piece where you model your application, develop your application, right, through modeling, getting together with your business and IT, and being able to develop in a multitude of cloud plus a multitude of different any device, any cloud, any way you want to deploy it in those situations. So thanks Larry for the session, and I'll kind of send it back to you.
All right. Yeah. And one of the things I just wanted to draw out a little bit, as we were talking about before, when we have all these different applications and different revisions of applications that people are drawing data from, this is a great example where we are pulling the data from production, but that production data would be associated with a part number, right? And so what we could do in this kind of a thing is develop the first dashboard where we have the data coming back from the production floor, but then as we start to understand better and better how the device is going to be used over time, what we're going to find is we can then improve I'm just going to move me back. I'm trying to get my screen back here.
Yeah, I'm making you presenter.
Okay, thank you. What we can do is we can start to add things to it. So now we want to know, we have a failure on the floor. We have this manufacturing application that's helping us to understand what's happening on the floor. Well, now I want to drill down into the PLM system and understand what revision of the part that that's being used. And maybe then I want to go over into requirements and understand what requirements are driving that, that performance metric. And if that's the path I want to take, what we need is the application to be able to plug into these other systems, right? and do it easily and not be too concerned about whether it's inside of our portfolio or not. So if it's not inside the portfolio, that's fine. We get a different data source and we develop the application in a way that allows us to draw that data. Might be very well that we need to understand we're driving data from more than one plant, right? And that one plant is running one application for PLM and a different plant's running a different PLM application. We want to be able to aggregate that data and bring it back into the system. So just want to sort of help people understand, we start with a small application and we can really expand it in a way that makes a lot of sense. And then as those applications change over time, the deep applications that are keeping track of all of the product or keeping track of all the manufacturing execution, right? Those applications can change, and the overall application that we're using to manage the process in our business doesn't need to change. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but I think we're back to, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So thanks again, Luke. That was a great run through. Our next session, we have not planned it yet. I think we're going to do it in October. It looks like closed loop quality is going to be the topic, but we'll be sending out emails to ask you to register if you're interested in the next Lunch with Larry. We're going to take September off and get started again in October. So thank you so much for your attention. I appreciate your time and enjoy the session.